I never expected that moving into my dream home in Scottsdale, Arizona, would turn into a nightmare involving fake police officers. But there I was on a sweltering Tuesday morning in June, watching two people in what looked like official security uniforms physically blocking my moving truck from entering my own driveway. My name is Xavier Sullivan, and I had just closed on a beautiful 4-bedroom house in the Saguaro Heights development 3 days earlier. The place was perfect, everything I had worked for during my 10 years as a software engineer. The neighborhood looked pristine with its manicured lawns, desert landscaping, and uniform beige stucco homes. I had read through the HOA documents before purchasing. Nothing seemed too unreasonable at the time. Standard stuff about lawn maintenance, exterior paint colors, and quiet hours. I figured I could live with that. The moving truck had arrived right on schedule at 9 in the morning. I had flown in from Seattle the night before, staying at a nearby hotel so I could be there first thing. The movers, a company called Desert Express Moving, were professional and punctual. Their massive truck pulled up to the curb in front of my new house, and I felt that surge of excitement you get when starting a new chapter of your life. That excitement lasted about 5 minutes. As the moving crew began unloading the ramp, a white golf cart came speeding down the street. It had an official-looking seal on the side that read Saguaro Heights Security, with what appeared to be a badge logo. Two people jumped out, both wearing navy blue uniforms with patches and badges that caught the morning sunlight. The woman looked to be in her late 40s with bleached blonde hair pulled back so tight it seemed to stretch her face. Her nameplate read, Brenda Morrison, HOA President. The man with her was younger, maybe 30, with a buzz cut and mirror sunglasses that he clearly thought made him look intimidating. "Stop right there," Brenda shouted, holding up her hand like she was directing traffic. "You cannot proceed with this move." I walked over, confused but trying to stay polite. "Excuse me, I own this house. I closed on Friday. These are my movers." She looked me up and down with obvious disdain. "I am well aware of the recent sale, Mr. Sullivan. However, you did not file the proper moving permits with the HOA. All moves must be scheduled and approved 72 hours in advance. It is clearly stated in Section 14, subsection C of the HOA bylaws." I pulled out my phone, pulling up the digital copy of the HOA documents my realtor had sent me. I read through everything. There was nothing about needing approval to move in. I need to schedule moves out for large deliveries, but nothing about moving into my own house. The man stepped forward, his hand resting on what looked like a baton attached to his belt. "Madam already told you the rules. You need to reschedule." "Who are you exactly?" I asked, looking at his uniform more carefully. It said Security Officer D. Patterson, but something felt off about it. "We are authorized HOA security personnel," Brenda interjected, "and we have the authority to enforce community regulations." "Your move is not approved, therefore it cannot proceed." The head mover, a stocky guy named Carlos who had been doing this for 20 years according to his conversation during the drive over, walked up beside me. "Sir, we have other jobs scheduled today. We cannot just wait around." "We have a schedule." "I understand," I said, then turned back to Brenda. "Look, I did not see anything about this in my documents. Can you show me exactly where it says that?" She pulled out a thick binder from the golf cart. "Right here." This is the revised 2024 edition of our bylaws, which was distributed to all homeowners last November. I was not a homeowner last November. I bought the house 3 days ago. That is not my problem. The previous owner should have informed you. Ignorance of the rules does not exempt you from following them. My patience was starting to wear thin in the Arizona heat. "Okay, fine. How do I file this permit right now so we can get moving? The permit application must be submitted in writing, reviewed by the Architectural Review Committee, and approved by the board. The process takes 5 to 7 business days. That is insane. I cannot leave my furniture on the truck for a week. I cannot even stay in my house without my bed and my stuff. Brenda crossed her arms. You should have thought of that before breaking HOA regulations. Carlos stepped in, his voice firm but professional. Look, lady, I do not know what kind of game you are playing, but this man owns that house. You cannot stop us from delivering his property to his property. The security officer, Patterson, moved to block the truck's path more directly, standing in front of the driveway. You are not moving anything until you have proper authorization. If you attempt to proceed, we will detain you for trespassing and property violation. Detain me? On my own property? I could not believe what I was hearing. This is HOA property and we have enforcement authority, Brenda said with a smug smile that made my blood boil. Something about this whole situation felt wrong. I had heard horror stories about aggressive HOAs, but this seemed to cross a line. What authority exactly? Are you actual police officers? We do not need to be police officers, Patterson said. We are authorized community enforcement agents. That is not a real thing, I said, my voice rising. You cannot detain anyone. You are not law enforcement. Brenda stepped closer, her voice dropping to something almost threatening. Mr. Sullivan, I suggest you cooperate. We have the full backing of the HOA board and our legal team. If you resist, we can make your life in this community very difficult. Fines, liens, legal action. Is that really how you want to start your time here? The other movers had gathered around now, 5 guys total, all looking uncertain about what to do. One of them, a younger guy named Marcus, muttered, "This is crazy, man." I pulled out my phone. "I am calling the police. This is harassment." "Go ahead," Brenda said, not looking worried at all. "We are well within our rights." I dialed 911, my hands shaking with frustration and anger. The operator answered, and I explained the situation as calmly as I could. I just bought a house in Saguaro Heights, and the HOA is physically blocking my moving truck. They are threatening to detain us if we try to move my belongings into my own house. The operator asked for my address and said officers would be dispatched. The wait time might be 20 to 30 minutes given current call volume. I thanked her and hung up. "Police are on their way," I said. Brenda just shrugged. "Fine by us. They will tell you the same thing we are. HOA regulations are legally binding contracts." Patterson remained standing in front of the truck, arms crossed, looking like he thought he was some kind of action hero. Carlos walked back to check the truck, making sure everything was secured while we waited. His crew looked annoyed but stayed professional. The morning sun was getting brutal. It had to be pushing 95 degrees already, and we were all standing around in the direct sunlight. I went to my car and grabbed some water bottles I had bought the night before, offering them to the moving crew. They accepted gratefully. "You guys deal with this kind of thing often?" I asked Carlos quietly. "HOA disputes? Sometimes, but nothing like this. Usually it is just someone complaining about a truck blocking a mailbox or something. I have never seen anyone try to physically stop a move." He shook his head. "Those uniforms look fake to me, man. I have got a cousin who is a security guard and those patches do not look right." That observation made me look more carefully at Brenda and Patterson. Now that Carlos mentioned it, the uniforms did look a bit off. The material seemed cheap, like costume fabric rather than actual uniform material. The badges were shiny but looked like the kind of thing you could buy online. And the patches were not embroidered, they looked heat-pressed. "Hey," I called out to Patterson. "What company do you work for?" "Saguaro Heights Community Security," he replied without looking at me. Is that a private security company, licensed with the state? We do not need to answer your questions. Actually, private security in Arizona requires licensing through the Department of Public Safety. Can I see your license? Patterson looked at Brenda, who jumped in quickly. We are not private security. We are HOA enforcement officers. Different category entirely. Still requires licensing, I said, though I was not actually sure about that. I was mostly testing them, and their defensive reactions were telling. A few neighbors had started coming out of their houses, drawn by the commotion. An elderly man from across the street wandered over, wearing a sun hat and walking with a cane. What is all this about? He asked. Brenda turned on him with a bright, fake smile. Nothing to worry about, Mr. Chen, just enforcing community standards. This young man is moving in, is he not? I saw the sold sign come down last week. He failed to file proper permits, Brenda said, her voice taking on a sugary quality that was somehow more irritating than her aggressive tone. Mr. Chen frowned. Permits to move in. I moved in 8 years ago. There was no such thing. The rules have been updated, Brenda said tersely. Nobody told me about any new rules, Mr. Chen said. The bylaws were distributed last November. I never got anything. Brenda's smile was getting strained. Then you should check your mail more carefully. Now, if you will excuse us, we are handling an enforcement matter. But Mr. Chen was not backing down. I am on the HOA board, young lady. I am the treasurer, and I do not remember us ever approving anything about moving permits or security officers. That was interesting. Brenda's face flushed red. The vote was taken at the February meeting. I was at the February meeting. We discussed the budget and the pool maintenance contract. Nothing about this. There was an emergency session you missed. Nobody told me about any emergency session. Their argument was interrupted by the arrival of a police cruiser. Finally, a Scottsdale Police Department SUV pulled up, and 2 officers got out. One was a tall woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, the other a shorter Hispanic man with a stocky build. Both looked like they had been doing this job for a while. Who called about a dispute? The female officer asked, glancing around at all of us. I did, I said, stepping forward. I am Xavier Sullivan. I just bought this house, and these 2 are blocking my moving truck, claiming I need HOA permits to move into my own home. The male officer looked at Brenda and Patterson. You are with the HOA. I am the HOA president, Brenda said, pulling herself up straighter. And this is our security officer. This man is in violation of community regulations. What regulations specifically? The female officer asked. Her name tag read Officer K. Martinez. Brenda launched into her explanation about the permits and the bylaws. The officers listened patiently, then the male officer, whose tag read Officer J. Ramirez, turned to me. You own this property, sir? Yes, officer. I closed on Friday. I have the paperwork in my car if you need to see it. That would be helpful. I retrieved the closing documents from my rental car, handing them over. Officer Ramirez looked through them carefully, then handed them back. Everything looks in order. This is your property. But he did not file the proper permits, Brenda protested. Madam, HOA regulations cannot prevent a property owner from accessing their own property or moving in, Officer Martinez said. If there is a legitimate dispute about procedures, that is a civil matter to be handled through proper channels. But you cannot physically block someone from moving into their home. We have every right to enforce our rules, Brenda insisted. You have the right to fine someone or pursue civil remedies if you believe rules were violated, Officer Ramirez said. But you cannot physically detain someone or prevent them from accessing their property. That crosses into criminal territory. Patterson had been quiet during this exchange, and I noticed he had moved away from the truck, no longer blocking it directly. He looked nervous, his eyes darting between the officers and Brenda. "Officer, may I ask something?" I said. "Are these two actually licensed security personnel?" Officer Martinez turned her attention to Patterson. "Are you licensed as a security guard in Arizona?" Patterson hesitated. "I am HOA security." "That is not what I asked. Do you have a valid security guard license issued by the Arizona Department of Public Safety?" "I do not need one. I am not a security guard. I am community enforcement." "If you are wearing a uniform and performing security functions, you need a license," Officer Martinez said, her tone getting sharper. "Can you show me identification?" Patterson reluctantly pulled out his wallet, handing over his driver's license. Officer Martinez examined it, then walked back to her cruiser to run it. Officer Ramirez kept his attention on Brenda and Patterson, his hand resting casually on his belt. "Those uniforms," Mr. Chen said suddenly, pointing at Patterson. "Those are not real police or security uniforms. I can tell. My son is a police officer in Phoenix. Those badges are fake." "They are HOA enforcement uniforms," Brenda snapped. "There is no such thing as HOA enforcement uniforms with badges," Mr. Chen said. "This is ridiculous. Brenda, what are you doing?" Officer Martinez returned from the cruiser and her expression had changed. She looked more serious now, more alert. "Mr. Patterson, have you ever been arrested?" Patterson's face went pale. "That was years ago. I did my time." "What for?" Officer Ramirez asked. "Does not matter." "I paid my debt to society." Officer Martinez exchanged a look with her partner. "Impersonating a police officer, according to the records. 3 years ago in Nevada." My jaw dropped. The moving crew all took a step back. Even Brenda looked shocked. "That is in the past," Patterson said, his voice rising. "I am not impersonating anyone now. This is just a uniform for the HOA. A uniform with a badge that looks remarkably similar to official law enforcement badges," Officer Martinez said. "And you were preventing these people from proceeding with their lawful activity while wearing that uniform and displaying that badge. That is a problem." "We were just enforcing HOA rules," Patterson protested. "Madam," Officer Ramirez said, turning to Brenda, "did you know about his prior conviction?" "Of course not," Brenda said, but her voice wavered. "He applied for the position. He seemed qualified." "What position?" "There is no such position," Mr. Chen interjected. "The board never authorized hiring any security personnel," Brenda rounded on him. "The president has discretionary authority for community safety matters." "No, you do not. That is not in the bylaws at all. Show me where it says that." Officer Martinez held up a hand. "Okay, everyone calm down. Mr. Patterson, I need you to take off that uniform top, right now." "What? Why?" "Because you are wearing a uniform with a badge that could be mistaken for official law enforcement. You have a prior conviction for impersonating an officer, and you just attempted to detain citizens from accessing their own property. Take it off now." Patterson looked at Brenda, who offered no help. Slowly, reluctantly, he unbuttoned the uniform shirt, revealing a plain white T-shirt underneath. The moment he took off that fake uniform, he looked like exactly what he probably was. Just some guy Brenda had hired to intimidate people. Officer Ramirez picked up the shirt, examining the badge. "This is very similar to actual law enforcement badges. Where did you get this?" "Online," Patterson muttered. "And you did not think that was a problem, given your history?" "I was not pretending to be a cop. I was just doing my job for the HOA. Your job was to prevent people from moving into their own homes while wearing a fake badge." Officer Martinez's voice was heavy with sarcasm. Brenda tried to intervene. "Officers, I think there has been a misunderstanding. We were simply trying to maintain community standards. Perhaps we were overzealous, but surely that does not warrant this kind of treatment." "Madam, you attempted to unlawfully detain these people," Officer Ramirez said. "You prevented them from accessing their property through intimidation and false authority. That is not a misunderstanding, that is a crime. A crime. That is absurd. We are the HOA, we have authority here." "You have the authority granted by civil contract law, which allows you to enforce rules through proper legal channels like fines and lawsuits," Officer Martinez explained, clearly losing patience. "You do not have authority to physically block people, threaten them with detention, or impersonate law enforcement, all of which you too did here today." I found my voice again. "So what happens now?" Officer Martinez looked at me. "Mr. Sullivan, do you want to press charges for unlawful detention?" I thought about it. Part of me wanted to just get them out of the way and move on with my life. But another part of me was furious. These people had tried to bully me, intimidate me, and prevent me from moving into my own home on what should have been an exciting day. And from what Mr. Chen was saying, they had done this without any real authority, making up rules and positions that did not exist. "Yes," I said firmly. "I want to press charges." "Sir, you are making a big mistake," Brenda said, her voice turning cold. "The HOA has significant legal resources. We will make your life here miserable." "Madam, I strongly suggest you stop talking right now," Officer Ramirez said. "You are making this worse for yourself." Officer Martinez pulled out her handcuffs. "Brenda Morrison, you are under arrest for unlawful detention and abuse of authority. You have the right to remain silent." "This is outrageous," Brenda shrieked. "You cannot arrest me. I am the HOA president." "That does not place you above the law," Officer Martinez said calmly, cuffing her wrists behind her back. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you." Officer Ramirez was doing the same with Patterson, who had gone completely quiet, staring at the ground. He clearly knew the drill from his previous arrest. "Mr. Chen, is it?" Officer Martinez said, turning to the elderly man. "Yes, officer. Howard Chen. Can you get in touch with the other board members? They are going to need to sort out what is happening with their HOA president." "Absolutely. I will call them right away." Mr. Chen looked shaken but also grimly satisfied. I knew something was not right about all this. Brenda has been acting strange for months, making decisions without consulting the board, claiming she had authority she did not have. This explains a lot. As the officers loaded Brenda and Patterson into the back of the cruiser, Brenda kept shouting, "This is illegal. You are violating HOA sovereignty. We have rights. Our lawyers will have your badges." Officer Martinez shut the door on her protests and walked back over to me. "Mr. Sullivan, we will need you to come down to the station later to give a full statement. But for now, you are free to proceed with your move." "Thank you, officers. I really appreciate you coming out." "Just doing our job," Officer Ramirez said. "Welcome to the neighborhood. Sorry your first day had to be like this." They drove off with Brenda and Patterson in the back seat. I stood there for a moment, processing everything that had just happened. Carlos clapped me on the shoulder. "Well, that was something else. Can we get started now?" "Yes, please. Let me get moving before anything else insane happens." The crew got to work immediately, moving with efficient speed. Within minutes, they had furniture dollies loaded and were carrying my couch through the front door. I followed them in, directing them on where things should go. The house felt surreal now, like I was walking through someone else's story. Mr. Chen came over as I was supervising the placement of my bedroom furniture. "Mr. Sullivan, I owe you an apology on behalf of the HOA. What Brenda did was completely unacceptable and unauthorized." "It is not your fault," I assured him. "You did not know what she was doing." "Still, it reflects poorly on all of us. I have called an emergency board meeting for this evening. We need to address this situation immediately and figure out what else she has been doing without authorization. What is the deal with her? Is she always like that?" Mr. Chen sighed, settling onto my front steps to rest his legs. "Brenda moved into the neighborhood about 2 years ago. She seemed nice at first, very enthusiastic about community involvement. She volunteered for everything, joined committees, attended every meeting. Last year, she ran for HOA president, and nobody else wanted the job, so she won by default. At first, she was fine. But over the past 6 months or so, she became more and more controlling. She started interpreting the bylaws in increasingly strict ways, fining people for minor violations, sending threatening letters. Several of us on the board tried to rein her in, but she would claim she was just enforcing the rules as written. This thing with the fake security officer and made-up permits, though, that is a whole new level. Did anyone ever push back against her? A few people tried. There was a couple on Mesquite Drive who painted their shutters without approval. The color was maybe one shade off from the approved palette, barely noticeable. Brenda fined them $500 and threatened to put a lien on their house if they did not repaint immediately. They ended up repainting just to avoid the hassle. Another family got fined because their garbage cans were visible from the street on a non-collection day. Someone's teenage daughter got a violation notice for parking her car on the driveway instead of in the garage. It has been endless. That is insane. Why did not the board remove her? We tried. We called for a vote of no confidence, but Brenda claimed it was not valid because it was not done according to proper procedures. She cited some obscure bylaw about requiring a petition with signatures from 30% of homeowners. We started gathering signatures, but people were afraid she would retaliate with fines and violations. She created an atmosphere of fear in this neighborhood. He shook his head sadly. Today, though, she crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed, arrested by the police. That is grounds for immediate removal. Good, I said, because I am not living in a neighborhood run by someone like that. None of us want to, Mr. Chen agreed. This should have been handled a long time ago. The movers worked steadily through the morning and into the early afternoon. Despite the rocky start, they were amazing. Carlos and his team had everything unloaded, assembled, and placed within 4 hours. My furniture filled the empty house, transforming it from a blank space into something that was starting to feel like home. I tipped them generously and thanked them for their patience with the whole situation. Carlos laughed. "Brother, this is going to be a story we tell for years. The time we almost got arrested by fake HOA cops. You cannot make this stuff up." After they left, I spent the rest of the afternoon unpacking boxes and trying to create some sense of order. My thoughts kept drifting back to the morning's events, the whole situation still feeling surreal. I had expected challenges with moving, maybe some HOA regulations to navigate, but not fake cops and arrests. Around 5 in the afternoon, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find a woman in her mid-30s holding a casserole dish. She had curly brown hair and a warm smile. "Hi, I am Emily from next door. I heard you had quite the welcome to the neighborhood this morning. I wanted to bring you something for dinner. I figured you probably did not have time to think about food with everything that happened." "That is incredibly kind of you, thank you." I accepted the dish, which was still warm. "I am Xavier. I know, word travels fast around here. What Brenda did was completely out of line. Most of us are good people, I promise. She has just made things really unpleasant lately. So I am gathering. Mr. Chen filled me in a bit. Howard is great. He is one of the original residents here, been around since the development was built. He has been trying to keep Brenda in check for months. She glanced back at her house. I should get going, but if you need anything, I am right next door, number 47. I appreciate that, really. After she left, I heated up the casserole. It was chicken and rice with vegetables, perfectly seasoned and delicious. I ate while continuing to unpack, grateful for neighbors who were actually friendly. That evening, my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize with a local area code. I answered cautiously. Mr. Sullivan. This is Detective Angela Norton with the Scottsdale Police Department. I am following up on the incident this morning involving Brenda Morrison and David Patterson. Yes. Hello, Detective. What can I do for you? I wanted to let you know that both individuals have been formally charged. Mrs. Morrison is being charged with unlawful detention, abuse of authority, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Mr. Patterson is being charged with impersonating a law enforcement officer, which is a felony given his prior conviction, as well as unlawful detention. Both are also facing charges related to creating and using fraudulent badges and uniforms. Wow, that is more serious than I expected. It is very serious. Impersonating law enforcement is not something we take lightly, especially given Mr. Patterson's history. And Mrs. Morrison's actions, using her position as HOA president to create a fake security force to intimidate residents, that constitutes fraud and abuse of power. We have also learned that several other residents have filed complaints about similar incidents. You were not the first person they did this to. That surprised me. Really? Yes. After news of the arrest spread through the neighborhood, we received calls from 3 other homeowners describing similar encounters. One family was prevented from having a pool installed because Mrs. Morrison claimed they needed additional permits beyond what the HOA bylaws required. When they tried to proceed anyway, Mr. Patterson showed up in his fake uniform and threatened them with arrest for violating community safety regulations. They backed down rather than risk legal trouble. Another resident was blocked from having a roof repaired because Mrs. Morrison demanded an architectural review that, according to other board members, was not required for repairs. In each case, Patterson used his fake uniform and badge to intimidate people into compliance. That is horrible. How did she think she could get away with this? Power corrupts, Mr. Sullivan. She probably started with genuinely wanting to maintain community standards. But somewhere along the way, she began to enjoy the authority too much. She started inventing rules, hiring Patterson to enforce them, and using intimidation to make people comply. Most people do not know HOA law well enough to challenge her, and they are scared of the financial consequences of fighting the HOA. She exploited that fear. What happens now? They both have initial hearings scheduled for next week. Given Patterson's prior record and the severity of the charges, I doubt he will make bail. Mrs. Morrison posted bail this afternoon. I am calling to advise you that she is out, and while there is a protective order preventing her from contacting you directly, you should remain vigilant. Sometimes people in her position become vengeful. You think she might retaliate. I am not saying she will, but I want you to be aware of the possibility. If she or anyone acting on her behalf contacts you, threatens you, or engages in any kind of harassment, call us immediately. Document everything. Save all messages, emails, voicemails. If she violates the protective order, she will be arrested again. I understand. Thank you for letting me know. We will be in touch about your statement. Someone will call you to schedule a time for you to come in. Thank you for pressing charges, Mr. Sullivan. If more people stood up to this kind of abuse of authority, we would not see it as often as we do. After hanging up, I felt unsettled. The idea that Brenda was out there, potentially angry and looking for payback, was not comforting. I made sure all my doors and windows were locked and set up the security system that had come with the house. The next few days passed without incident. I focused on getting settled, unpacking the rest of my boxes, and starting my new remote job. The technology company I worked for was based in California, but had employees all over the country. I had taken the job specifically so I could relocate to Arizona and work from home. On Thursday evening, there was another knock at my door. This time it was Mr. Chen along with two other people, a middle-aged man and a younger woman. "Xavier, sorry to bother you," Mr. Chen said. "This is Robert Torres and Samantha Green. They are the other members of the HOA board. We wanted to update you on what has happened." I invited them in, offering drinks which they politely declined. We sat in my living room, which was now fully furnished and looking fairly presentable. Robert, who appeared to be in his 50s with graying hair and a serious demeanor, spoke first. "Mr. Sullivan, on behalf of the entire board, I want to apologize for what Brenda put you through. We have been conducting an investigation into her actions over the past year, and what we have found is deeply troubling." Samantha, who could not have been older than 35, pulled out a folder. "Brenda has been systematically violating HOA procedures and creating unauthorized rules. The moving permit requirement she cited, that does not exist. We found where she created that document herself, made it look official, and added it to the HOA website as if it were legitimate. She did the same thing with several other fake regulations. Pet restrictions that were never approved, parking rules that were not voted on, landscaping requirements that went beyond what the bylaws actually state. How did she get away with it for so long?" I asked. "She controlled access to the information," Robert explained. "She was in charge of the HOA website, the email communications, the physical copies of the bylaws that were distributed to new homeowners. She would give people her fake versions, and they would not know any different. When board members questioned her, she would produce the real bylaws and claim people were misunderstanding them. She was very skilled at manipulation. We also found financial irregularities," Mr. Chen added. "Brenda hired Patterson without board approval and was paying him out of HOA funds. She claimed it was a discretionary expense within her authority as president, but the amount she was paying him, $3,000 a month, required board approval according to our actual bylaws. She had been doing this for 4 months. $12,000, I said, stunned. Yes. Money that should have gone to actual community needs like landscaping and pool maintenance. We are pursuing legal action to recover those funds. What about her position as president? She was officially removed by emergency board vote on Tuesday night, Samantha said. Robert is now serving as interim president until we can hold proper elections. We have also filed a complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate, which oversees HOA management in the state. Brenda violated numerous regulations regarding HOA governance. We want you to know that this is not representative of how this community operates, Robert said. We are a good neighborhood with good people. Brenda was an aberration, someone who slipped through and abused her position. We are taking steps to ensure this never happens again, including implementing oversight procedures and requiring board approval for any major decisions. I appreciate you telling me all this, I said, and I am glad to hear you are taking it seriously. We are also waiving all HOA dues for you for the next year, Mr. Chen said. It is the least we can do after what you went through. That is very generous, but not necessary. We insist, Samantha said. You should not have to pay into an organization that tried to prevent you from moving into your own home. Consider it our way of making amends. After they left, I felt better about the situation. It was good to know that the board was taking responsibility and making changes. Still, the whole experience had left me wary. I found myself looking over my shoulder, wondering if Brenda might try something. My concerns were not unfounded. On Saturday morning, I woke up to find my car had been vandalized. Someone had keyed deep scratches into the paint on both sides, spelling out words I could not quite make out but that were clearly meant to be offensive. My tires had not been slashed, but they had been deflated, and someone had smeared what looked like dog feces on the door handles. I called the police immediately. Officer Martinez responded along with a different partner this time. She took photos, documented everything, and asked if I had any idea who might have done it. I think it might be related to Brenda Morrison, I said, the woman who was arrested on Tuesday. The HOA president, former president now. She was removed from her position, and there is a protective order preventing her from contacting me. Detective Norton warned me she might retaliate. Officer Martinez nodded grimly. Do you have security cameras? The house has a system, but I have not set up the outdoor cameras yet. It is on my to-do list. Get it done today. In the meantime, we will check with your neighbors to see if anyone has footage, and I will make sure Detective Norton knows about this. She was thorough, canvassing the nearby houses. Emily from next door had a doorbell camera, and while it did not capture my driveway directly, it did record someone walking up the street around 3 in the morning wearing a hoodie and gloves. The person's face was not visible, but they were the right build to be Brenda. It is not enough for charges, Officer Martinez said, but it is evidence of suspicious activity. Combined with the context, it supports the theory that this was targeted retaliation. I spent the rest of the day setting up the exterior security cameras and dealing with my car. The paint damage would cost over $2,000 to repair properly. The insurance would cover it, but it was still a massive hassle. I had to get it towed to a body shop, rent a car, file a police report, and deal with the insurance adjuster. By evening, I was exhausted and frustrated. This was not how I had envisioned my first week in my new home. Detective Norton called me on Sunday. Mr. Sullivan, I heard about the vandalism. I am sorry this is escalating. Do you think it was her? I do, but proving it is another matter. The doorbell footage is suggestive but not conclusive. What we can do is bring her in for questioning, make it clear that we are watching her. Sometimes that is enough to make someone back off. And if it is not, then she will make a mistake and we will catch her. People like this always do. They cannot help themselves. That was not particularly reassuring, but I appreciated her honesty. Monday morning, I was working from home when I got an email. It was from an address I did not recognize, but the subject line read, HOA violation notice. My stomach sank as I opened it. The email claimed to be an official HOA notice informing me that I was in violation of multiple community standards. My grass was allegedly too tall. My garbage cans had been left visible from the street. My exterior paint had unauthorized markings. The email demanded I correct these violations within 72 hours or face fines starting at $500 per violation per day. I immediately called Mr. Chen. Howard, I just got an HOA violation email. Is this legitimate? What? No, absolutely not. We are not issuing any violations right now except for genuine problems, and I would know about those. Forward it to me. I sent him the email and he called back within 5 minutes. That is completely fake. It is not from any official HOA email address. Someone spoofed our format. This is harassment. I am guessing Brenda. Almost certainly. Save that email and forward it to Detective Norton. This is evidence she is continuing to harass you in violation of the protective order. I did exactly that. Detective Norton called back within an hour. Mr. Sullivan, we are bringing Mrs. Morrison in right now. This email constitutes a violation of the protective order. She is going to be arrested again. Can you prove the email came from her? Our tech unit will trace it. Even if she tried to disguise the source, there are ways to track it. And given the content, the context, and the pattern of behavior, it is enough to arrest her on suspicion. A judge will likely revoke her bail at this point. True to her word, Brenda was arrested again that afternoon. This time, she did not make bail. The judge agreed she was a flight risk and a danger to me and ordered her held until trial. The news spread through the neighborhood quickly. Emily stopped by that evening with cookies and updates. Everyone is talking about it. Half the neighborhood is relieved she is finally facing consequences. The other half cannot believe it got this far. Some of Brenda's friends are claiming she is being persecuted, that you are overreacting. Overreacting. She vandalized my car and sent threatening emails. I know. I am just telling you what some people are saying. Brenda had a few allies who bought into her whole protecting the neighborhood act. They think you are an outsider who moved in and immediately caused trouble. I caused trouble. I tried to move into my house, and she had me blocked by a fake cop. You do not have to convince me. I am just warning you that not everyone sees it that way. People are complicated, especially in HOAs. She was right, of course. Over the next few days, I noticed some neighbors going out of their way to avoid me. A few gave me cold looks when I checked my mailbox. Others, like Emily and Mr. Chen, were friendly and supportive. The community was divided. The trial was scheduled for August, about 2 months away. In the meantime, I tried to settle into normal life. My job was going well. I was making progress on organizing the house, and I was exploring Scottsdale. The city was beautiful, full of hiking trails, great restaurants, and amazing desert scenery. On good days, I could almost forget about the HOA drama, but reminders kept popping up. I received a letter from Brenda's attorney threatening to sue me for defamation and emotional distress. The letter claimed I had made false accusations that damaged her reputation. I forwarded it to Detective Norton and also hired my own attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen who specialized in HOA disputes and civil rights cases. This is a classic intimidation tactic, Patricia explained during our first meeting. They are trying to scare you into dropping the charges. It will not work. You have documentation, police reports, and multiple witnesses. Her claims have no merit. Can she actually sue me? Anyone can sue anyone for anything. Whether they will win is another question. In this case, the answer is no. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation, and everything you have said is documented fact. Moreover, you have not made any public statements about her beyond cooperating with law enforcement. There is no case here. Patricia sent a response to Brenda's attorney, firmly rejecting the threats and making it clear we would countersue for harassment if they continued. That seemed to quiet things down. June turned into July. The Arizona summer was brutal, with temperatures regularly exceeding 110 degrees. I learned quickly to do any outdoor activities early in the morning or late in the evening. I also invested in heavy-duty sunscreen and a good hat. The neighborhood slowly started feeling more like home. I got to know Emily and her husband Marcus, who was a teacher at a local high school. They had 2 young kids who were always playing in their backyard. Mr. Chen and I fell into a routine of having coffee together on Saturday mornings, sitting on his porch and talking about everything from politics to sports to HOA governance. Other neighbors gradually warmed up to me as it became clear I was not some troublemaker, but just a normal guy who had been treated unfairly. In late July, Detective Norton called with an update. "Mr. Sullivan, I wanted to let you know that David Patterson took a plea deal. He is pleading guilty to impersonating an officer and unlawful detention in exchange for a reduced sentence. 2 years in prison plus 3 years probation. What about Brenda? She is refusing to take a deal. Her attorney is arguing that she was misled by Patterson, that she genuinely believed he was a legitimate security officer, and that she was acting within her authority as HOA president. They are trying to paint her as a victim of Patterson's deception. That is ridiculous. She hired him. She created the fake rules. I know, and the evidence supports that, but they are going to trial, which means you will need to testify. I expected that. I am ready." The trial began on August 15th. The courthouse in downtown Scottsdale was modern and imposing. I arrived early, wearing a suit despite the heat, and met with the prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Jennifer Walsh who was with the county attorney's office. "This should be straightforward," Jennifer explained. "We have documentation of the fake bylaws, financial records showing unauthorized payments, testimony from other board members and residents, and your direct experience. The defense will try to argue that she believed she was acting within her authority, and that any misunderstandings were honest mistakes, not crimes. Our job is to prove that she knowingly and intentionally abused her position, created fraudulent documents, and conspired with Patterson to intimidate residents." The courtroom was packed. Several neighbors had come to watch, some supporting me, others there to support Brenda. Mr. Chen, Robert, and Samantha were there to testify. Emily came to show solidarity. Even Carlos, my mover, had agreed to testify about what he witnessed. Brenda sat at the defense table looking very different from the aggressive woman who had blocked my moving truck. She wore a conservative blue dress and glasses I had never seen before, her hair styled softly. She looked like someone's friendly aunt, not someone who had orchestrated a campaign of intimidation and fraud. The trial lasted 3 days. The prosecution methodically built their case, walking through the timeline of Brenda's increasing control over the HOA, the creation of fake rules, the hiring of Patterson, and the pattern of intimidation. Multiple residents testified about being threatened, fined, or blocked from legitimate activities. When it was my turn to testify, I walked through the events of that Tuesday morning in detail. Jennifer asked me to describe how I felt when Brenda and Patterson blocked my moving truck. "I felt confused at first," I said, "then frustrated, then angry, but also intimidated. Patterson had what looked like a police uniform and badge. He had a baton. He was talking about detaining us. Even though I knew I had not done anything wrong, there was a part of me that was scared. That is what authority figures do. We are conditioned to listen to people in uniforms with badges. Brenda knew that. She was counting on it." The defense attorney, a slick man in an expensive suit named Gregory Martin, cross-examined me aggressively. He tried to suggest I had been belligerent, that I had refused to cooperate with reasonable requests, that I had escalated the situation unnecessarily by calling the police. "Mr. Sullivan, is it not true that you could have simply rescheduled your move for a few days later once the permit issue was resolved?" There was no permit issue. The permit requirement did not exist. It was something Mrs. Morrison made up. But you did not know that at the time, did you? I suspected it. The documents I had reviewed did not mention it. But regardless, even if it were a real requirement, nobody has the authority to physically block me from accessing my own property. Mrs. Morrison was trying to maintain community standards. Is that not something you support? I support legitimate community standards enforced through legitimate means. What Mrs. Morrison did was neither legitimate nor legal. He tried several more angles, but none of them landed. My testimony was consistent with the evidence and with what everyone else had said. The defense's case was weak. Brenda testified that she had believed everything she was doing was legal and proper. She claimed Patterson had misrepresented his credentials and that she had not known about his prior conviction. She said the fake bylaws were drafts she had been working on to propose to the board, and that their appearance on the HOA website was an accident. Under cross-examination, Jennifer Walsh tore her story apart. Mrs. Morrison, you claim these fake bylaws were drafts. Yet they were formatted identically to the real bylaws, included official-looking headers and dates, and were distributed to new homeowners as if they were legitimate. That seems like more than a draft, does it not? I wanted them to look professional when I presented them to the board. But you never presented them to the board, did you? I was planning to. For how long? You were president for over a year. These fake bylaws appeared on the website 10 months ago. When exactly were you planning to seek board approval? Brenda faltered. I wanted to gather more data about how they worked in practice first. So you were enforcing rules that had never been approved, fining residents, preventing them from doing legitimate activities on their own property, all without any authorization. And you want this jury to believe that was an honest mistake. I was doing what I thought was best for the community. What about the financial records showing you paid David Patterson $12,000 without board approval? Was that also what you thought was best? We needed security. Did the board agree you needed security? They should have. The neighborhood was getting too lax. That is not what I asked. Did the board authorize hiring a security officer and paying him $3,000 per month? No, but as president, I had discretionary authority. For expenditures up to $500 according to your actual bylaws. Correct. The bylaws were unclear. They state very clearly that any expenditure over $500 requires board approval. You exceeded that by $11,500. That is not unclear, Mrs. Morrison. That is you deliberately violating the rules you were supposed to be enforcing. The cross-examination went on, methodically dismantling each of Brenda's claims. By the time Jennifer was done, Brenda looked rattled and defensive. The closing arguments were predictable. Gregory Martin painted Brenda as a dedicated volunteer who had made some mistakes but had never intended to harm anyone. Jennifer Walsh argued that Brenda had systematically abused her position, violated the rights of residents, and conspired to commit fraud through the creation and enforcement of fake rules. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts: unlawful detention, abuse of authority, conspiracy to commit fraud, and embezzlement for the unauthorized payments to Patterson. Brenda's face went pale as the verdicts were read. Gregory Martin put a hand on her shoulder, whispering something, but she just stared straight ahead. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, Brenda was taken into custody, bail revoked given the guilty verdict. At the sentencing hearing, the judge was not sympathetic. He noted that Brenda had held a position of trust within her community and had violated that trust in numerous ways. He emphasized that HOA board members have real authority over people's homes and finances, and that abuse of that authority could not be tolerated. Mrs. Morrison, you had an opportunity to serve your community in a positive way, the judge said. Instead, you used your position to intimidate, harass, and defraud your neighbors. You created fake rules, hired an ex-convict to impersonate a police officer, and systematically violated the rights of people who trusted you to act in their best interests. This court takes such abuses very seriously. He sentenced her to 18 months in prison for the unlawful detention and fraud charges, plus 3 years of probation. She was also ordered to pay restitution to the HOA for the unauthorized payments to Patterson, restitution to me for the car vandalism and associated costs, and fines totaling $15,000. As they led her away, Brenda looked back at the courtroom one more time. Her eyes met mine briefly, and I saw not anger but defeat. Whatever she had thought she was building with her reign over the HOA, it had collapsed completely. Outside the courthouse, Mr. Chen shook my hand. Thank you for standing up to her. If you had just backed down that first day, she would still be terrorizing people. I just wanted to move into my house, I said. And that is exactly the point. People should not have to fight just to live peacefully in their own homes. You did the right thing, and now she will face consequences. The aftermath of the trial was interesting to watch. The HOA held elections for a new president, and Robert Torres won. He implemented new oversight procedures, requiring any expenditure over $250 to get board approval and creating a resident review committee to hear complaints about HOA actions. The fake bylaws were removed from all materials and the website, and new homeowners received a packet clearly explaining the actual rules along with contact information for all board members if they had questions. Several of Brenda's allies quietly left the neighborhood, selling their homes and moving elsewhere. The community as a whole seemed to take a collective breath, relaxing into a more normal way of operating. As for me, I finally settled into the life I had imagined when I bought the house. I made friends with neighbors, explored Arizona, hiked in the mountains, and enjoyed working from home in a place with 300 days of sunshine per year. My bedroom window looked out onto a beautiful desert landscape with saguaro cacti and mountains in the distance. Every morning, I had coffee on my back patio, watching the sun rise over the desert. Emily and Marcus became good friends. We had dinner together regularly, and their kids started treating me like an honorary uncle. Mr. Chen and I continued our Saturday morning coffee routine, and he taught me about desert plants and local history. I joined a hiking group and met people from all over the valley. Life was good. About 6 months after the trial, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Brenda, postmarked from the prison where she was serving her sentence. I almost threw it away without opening it, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was not what I expected. It was not angry or defensive. Instead, it was reflective and somewhat apologetic. She wrote about how she had gotten caught up in the power of being HOA president, how she had started with good intentions, but had gradually convinced herself that she knew better than everyone else what was good for the community. She admitted that hiring Patterson had been a mistake born out of frustration that people were not listening to her. She acknowledged that creating fake rules was wrong and that she had violated the trust people had placed in her. The letter ended with a direct apology. Mr. Sullivan, I am sorry for what I put you through. You did not deserve to have your moving day ruined, your car vandalized, or to be dragged into court. I let my ego and my desire for control override my judgment and my ethics. I hope you are able to enjoy your home and your life in Scottsdale without any more interference from me or anyone else. You earned that right by standing up for yourself when most people would have just backed down. I read the letter twice, then filed it away. I appreciated the apology, though it did not change what had happened. Some things you cannot take back, no matter how sorry you are afterward. I never responded to the letter. There did not seem to be anything to say. Brenda had made her choices, faced the consequences, and now had to live with them. My part in her story was over. Life moved forward. I got promoted at work, earning a significant raise and more responsibilities. I adopted a dog from a local shelter, a 3-year-old German Shepherd mix named Apollo who loved hiking as much as I did. The house started feeling less like a new place and more like home, filled with memories and routines and the comfortable patina of daily life. The HOA became what it was supposed to be, a background organization that maintained common areas, organized occasional community events, and enforced reasonable standards without being intrusive. I paid my dues, attended the annual meeting, and voted on issues that came up, but it was not a source of stress or drama. Just a normal part of homeownership. Looking back on that first day, watching fake cops block my moving truck, I sometimes marvel at how things turned out. I could have backed down, rescheduled my move, and avoided all the conflict. Brenda and Patterson would probably still be operating their intimidation scheme. Other residents would still be living in fear of arbitrary rules and fake violations. Instead, I stood my ground, called the real police, and set in motion a chain of events that exposed corruption and abuse. It was not comfortable or easy, and there were moments when I questioned whether it was worth the hassle. But ultimately, I am glad I did it, because communities matter. The places where we live, the neighborhoods we call home, they should be sources of safety and comfort, not anxiety and fear. HOAs can serve a legitimate purpose in maintaining property values and common spaces, but only when they are run transparently, fairly, and within the bounds of the law. When someone abuses a position of authority, whether it is a cop, a politician, an HOA president, or anyone else, speaking up is not causing trouble. It is defending the basic principle that nobody is above the law. And that power without accountability inevitably becomes tyranny, even in small, seemingly insignificant ways. My moving truck getting blocked was not just about me getting into my house on schedule. It was about whether one person could use fake authority to control how other people lived. And the answer, thankfully, was no. Today, nearly a year after that chaotic morning, I am sitting on my patio with Apollo at my feet, watching the sun set over the Arizona desert. The sky is painted in shades of orange, pink, and purple that seem impossible, too vivid to be real. The temperature is finally dropping below 100 degrees as evening settles in. Somewhere in the neighborhood, kids are playing. I can hear music drifting from a backyard party a few houses down. This is what home is supposed to feel like. Not perfect, not without its quirks and challenges, but fundamentally peaceful. A place where you can live your life without someone in a fake uniform telling you that you do not have permission to exist in your own space. I raise my glass of iced tea in a silent toast to that chaotic first day, to the real police officers who did their jobs properly, to the neighbors who supported me, and to everyone who has ever stood up against petty tyrants and arbitrary authority. The world has enough real problems without people manufacturing fake ones to feel important. The sun slips below the horizon, and the desert sky deepens to twilight. Apollo stretches, yawns, and rests his head on my foot. Inside, my house is warm and welcoming, filled with furniture that finally made it off that moving truck and into the rooms where it belongs. Home sweet home, just as it should be, with no fake cops blocking the driveway.